On the very day the CCP's fourth plenum opened, bad news arrived for China's economy. Third quarter GDP fell below 5%, the lowest this year. At the same time, overcapacity kept worsening and consumption remained sluggish, pushing deflationary pressure higher year by year. Price wars among firms are intensifying, and malignant involution has become the cancer of China's economy. Unable to find a way out, the CCP authorities started painting grand visions to fool themselves. The CCP's 15th five-year plan will focus on technological innovation, taking the United States as the hypothetical enemy as Beijing attempts to achieve technological self-reliance through de-Americanization. This very moment, Trump put forward three themes for a meeting with Xi Jinping: rare earths, soybeans, and fentanyl, plainly on the table. Don't miss the next drop, subscribe and hit the bell. The CCP's fourth plenum had barely opened when the regime itself flipped over its economic hole card. China's National Bureau of Statistics just released the latest figures. Q3 GDP is down to only 4.8%, a new low for the year. The outside world is stunned because even as the meeting was underway, Xi Jinping was still chanting high-quality development and a science and technology powerhouse, while the reality is that factories are churning out product and ordinary people don't dare spend. Officially, they say stable with an improving trend, but in truth it's overcapacity and shrinking consumption. China's economy is forcing itself to swallow the poison of involution. Industrial value added in September still rose 6.5%, apparently impressive, but retail sales grew only 3%, a 10-month low. It's like flooring the gas pedal only to realize the tank's already dry. Products pile up in warehouses, shopping malls are deserted. This isn't a recovery, it's the last gasp of fake prosperity. Foreign media captured it precisely. The Chinese economic model has become production for production's sake. Not for markets, not for the people, but only to prop up the face of GDP. What's more bizarre, on the very day the economic data hit new lows, inside the fourth plenum she was still doubling down on technological self-reliance and a semiconductor breakthrough. This is a high-stakes gamble divorced from reality. The US is blocking chips and imposing 100% tariffs, yet Beijing keeps shouting about breaking the blockade. The result, Huawei can't hold out, foreign capital is pulling out, and consumption is collapsing. Saving the nation through technology is turning into self-harm through technology. Fake prosperity in the data, real crisis on the ground. On the day the fourth plenum convened, China's Statistics Bureau released the latest numbers. This year's third quarter GDP growth was only 4.8%, lower than the previous quarter's 5.2% and the year's lowest. In September, industrial value added rose 6.5% year-on-year, a 3-month high and above expectations, but retail sales rose only 3%, a 10-month low, highlighting the structural dilemma of industrial overcapacity and insufficient domestic demand. Overcapacity alongside weak consumption is exactly what the US has long criticized, and it's one of the pressures on this fourth plenum. However, rebalancing the economy and addressing weak demand would mean tilting the scales toward Chinese households and giving up part of the regime's economic interests, moving the CCP's cheese in a way it would never accept. Betting the 15th five-year plan on tech, a contrarian high-stakes gamble. The CCP's goal is to compete with the US for world hegemony, Xi's recent global governance, and the so-called community of common destiny for mankind. Thus, the 15th five-year plan under review at the fourth plenum will likely still center on high-tech industries. The pro-Beijing Hong Kong outlet Singtao Daily reported that Trump's tariff war and tech war have exerted maximum pressure on Beijing across multiple domains, intensifying US-China confrontation. The 15th five-year plan will focus on technological innovation, with breakthroughs in key core technologies as the top goal. Lu Dian, a scholar within the CCP system, argues that in the 15th five-year plan, technological innovation is the core driver of high-quality development. The plan will focus on breakthroughs in key core technologies, especially in choke point fields such as semiconductors, AI, and quantum technology, while pushing traditional industries to upgrade via intelligent and digital transformation to support a modern industrial system. Chong Hongyuan, associate professor in international trade at Chile University of Technology, also believes the challenges Beijing now faces have shifted to soft issues. Solving the choke point problem in R&D will be a key focus of the 15th five-year plan. The CCP has long sought technological self-reliance, steadily de-Americanizing chips and software, using Huawei to replace NVIDIA and domestic WPS to replace Microsoft Office. The rare earths war backfires, US-China grappling escalates. In response to Beijing's latest rare earth export controls, On October 10th, Trump announced a 100% tariff on Chinese goods and export controls on all critical software. Experts analyze that, given the unchanged backdrop of US-China great power rivalry, over the next 5 years Beijing will massively pursue tech autonomy to avoid being at others' mercy, especially in semiconductors, AI, and quantum tech. Wu Chiasun, deputy director of the First Research Division at the Tsinghua Institution for Economic Research, Taiwan, wrote that clues to the 15th five-year plan can be found in the CCP's People's Daily, which ran 8 signed commentaries from September 30th to October 7th. Those state media pieces had to acknowledge that China's economy faces obstacles to dual circulation, business difficulties, and real estate volatility. Beijing is attempting to use high-quality development to push internal circulation, industrial upgrading, and tech autonomy, while simultaneously strengthening external openness. Wu judges that the plan will likely emphasize national security and the party's leadership, promote tech autonomy and Chinese-style modernization, and fold national security into the economy, science and technology, society, information, law, and governance, implicating institutional design, tech breakthroughs, and strategic resource allocation. Despite feeble domestic demand, a sluggish housing market, rising deflationary pressure year by year, and manufacturing overcapacity that has intensified price wars among firms, malignant involution has become the cancer of China's economy. To this, the CCP is utterly indifferent, unashamed, and even proud. During the National Day Golden Week, People's Daily ran 8 consecutive days of commentary boasting that China's economy is a ringing, unbreakable, unsinkable economic aircraft carrier. An involuted China, the price of fake prosperity. China is now trapped in an extremely fierce competitive loop. Firms run at full tilt yet make little money, so they cut wages and headcount. Workers endure more strain even as incomes fall. More people can only lose their jobs. This is the scene of a major economic downturn. On October 20th, the Wall Street Journal reported that Chinese people use the term involution to describe the worsening deflationary spiral, China's biggest economic problem. In other words, while Beijing strives for global leadership in future-facing industries such as AI, renewable energy, and robotics, it allows more traditional sectors to engage in a race to the bottom. The likely result is painful, a broad economic stall. Chen Bo, a senior research fellow at the East Asian Institute of the National University of Singapore, called this uncharted territory. Macquarie Group's chief China economist Larry Hu said involution is both a feature and a defect of the China model. Reuters reported that markets are watching how Beijing will balance industrial policy with demand stimulus, while considering an updated Made in China 2025 push for high-end technology. A recent People's Daily editorial again stressed Beijing's tech-centric industrial policy. The currency battlefield, the renminbi dream in tatters. A key battleground in competing with the US's currency. After the PBOC outlined its vision for a more multipolar monetary system, markets have watched more closely Beijing's efforts to raise the renminbi's global standing. A Standard Chartered research note said, "We expect the 15th five-year plan to tweak the rhetoric on RMB internationalization and more proactively promote the RMB's use and status, possibly proposing plans to facilitate cross-border RMB payments." Thus, worried about challenges to its ECNY, Beijing halted the stablecoin ambitions of Alibaba and JD.com in Hong Kong. The Financial Times reported on October 19 that Ant Group under Alibaba and JD.com had expressed interest in issuing stablecoins in Hong Kong or in launching virtual asset-backed products such as tokenized bonds. But their plans were blocked by Beijing. Hong Kong rolled out a stablecoin ordinance on August 1 this year, requiring any issuer of fiat-backed stablecoins in Hong Kong to obtain a license from the HKMA. The first licenses are expected in early 2026. A source familiar with PBOC briefings to tech giants said private sector stablecoins are seen as a challenge to the central bank's ECNY. Another source said Beijing's real concern is, who holds ultimate minting power, the central bank or private firms? Even so, the move to halt private stablecoins highlights Beijing's fear of dollar hegemony. Trump has already embraced stablecoins as a mainstream financial pillar and a tool to reinforce the dollar's dominance. Having developed the ECNY domestically, Beijing has begun promoting it globally. In April this year, regulators announced that the ECNY would be fully connected to cross-border settlement systems in all 10 ASEAN countries and 6 Middle Eastern countries. The CCP's monetary roadmap for RMB internationalization aims to escape dollar hegemony, yet existing stablecoins strongly support the dollar's traditional dominance. Stablecoins require backing by a pegged currency or other assets, e.g., gold. The best-known, most popular stablecoins USDT and USDC are pegged to the US dollar and backed by US Treasuries and other assets. As the fourth plenum convened, Bloomberg reported on October 20th that Trump has listed rare earths, fentanyl, and soybeans as top priorities in U.S.-China trade talks. On October 19th, aboard Air Force One en route from Florida back to Washington, Trump said, "I don't want them playing a rare earths game with us." U.S. Treasury Secretary Basant said the U.S. and China will hold talks later this week in Malaysia. Soybeans have long been a major bargaining chip in trade disputes. Last year, China bought about $12.6 billion worth of soybeans, but this year imports of U.S. soybeans fell to zero, the first time since November 2018. While avoiding U.S. beans, Chinese buyers have massively imported South American soybeans. According to data released by China's General Administration of Customs on October 20th, September imports of U.S. soybeans were zero, compared with 1.7 million tons in the same month last year. Meanwhile, arrivals from Brazil jumped 29.9% year-on-year to 10.96 million tons, accounting for 85.2% of China's soybean imports. Imports from Argentina rose 91.5% to 1.17 million tons, about 9%. However, buying from South America carries risks. China may face a supply gap between February and April next year because Brazil's new crop won't be on the market yet. Johnny Hsien, founder of Beijing-based Agridar, noted, "Without a trade deal, China could see a soybean supply gap between February and April next year. Brazil has already exported a lot of beans, and no one can say for sure how much old crop inventory remains." Trump said on October 19th that he believes the two sides can reach an agreement on soybeans. However, Beijing appears to have no sincerity in reaching a deal with the U.S. An October 20th Financial Times commentary argued that Beijing is ready to face off with Trump in the trade war. Early in this tariff conflict, China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs released a video of Mao Zedong from the Korean War era declaring, "If they want to fight for as long as it takes, we will fight for as long as it takes, until complete victory." At present, rare earths are Beijing's most powerful weapon. Yet if the CCP continues hardline measures and expands rare earth export controls globally, it could face more international backlash for weaponizing rare earths, putting Beijing in an increasingly disadvantageous position and tightening, even worsening, its external environment. ANZ's Greater China chief economist Raymond Young pointed out that a major challenge for Beijing is that due to geopolitical tensions, sales of Chinese smartphones and other high-tech products are limited in the US and European markets. That leaves prices for these products lower at home than comparable high-end items in developed markets. Young said, "In the past, as long as product quality improved, we could price at international levels. But if international markets can't be opened, it's hard to reflect quality gains in the numbers for Chinese products." The CCP is a rogue regime that will stop at nothing. This is the reality the West faces. If the trade war escalates further, Beijing might deploy other tools. China is the sole supplier of key chemical ingredients for many common medications, including antibiotics, heart disease drugs, cancer therapies, and allergy medications. Research has found that nearly 700 drugs used in the U.S. rely on ingredients produced only in China. Germany is also heavily dependent on China for pharmaceuticals. According to the Frankfurter Rundschau on October 20th, if Chinese suppliers shut down, Germany would lack 42 million boxes of medicines annually, and experts warn the healthcare system could collapse. Thus, the risks of dependence on China are enormous. David Frankas of the Healthcare Supply Chain Institute warned, "The further up the supply chain you look, the higher the dependence. Upstream production of certain inputs is almost entirely reliant on China." A typical example, 87% of medicines on the U.S. market are based on raw materials from China. Take the diabetes drug metformin. Of the 6 major manufacturers of its key precursor chemical dicyandiamide, 5 are located in China. Andreas Burkhardt, head of the German Generics Association Pro Generica, warned, "For some critical medicines we simply can't produce without Chinese supplies. This dependence is extremely dangerous. I truly don't know how policymakers can sleep at night." He noted that Beijing could easily wield its market dominance as political leverage through export restrictions, administrative delays, or prioritizing the domestic market, just as it has done in the rare earths dispute with the U.S. Even so, Beijing cannot emerge unscathed from a long trade war. With severe industrial overcapacity and weak domestic demand, many Chinese companies rely on exports to survive and simply cannot afford to lose market share. Meanwhile, Chinese college graduates already struggle to find jobs. Repeated purges of senior officials and military leaders have also undercut the image of stability and confidence Beijing tries to project at the top. This time, private enterprises across numerous industries have been affected, making top-down responses even more challenging. China's economic growth is slowing, the property market remains depressed, unemployment and especially youth unemployment is rising. U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent has repeatedly said Beijing should shift the economy toward consumption, a topic he has raised many times this year in meetings with Vice Premier He Lifeng. Last week, an IMF official voiced a similar view, calling on Beijing to focus more on domestic spending and reduce its reliance on industrial policy.